Have you ever been afraid to define the relationship? Have you ever wondered when is the best time to DTR, as they say? In this video, you're going to discover when and how to have the relationship talk with the person you're dating. First, let's talk about why it's important to define the relationship. The first thing that you do is to clarify what you both need and want, and that makes you have less confusion, less heartbreak in the long run. There are so many people who don't define the relationship and they just kind of let it go on, and they have this feeling that the person doesn't want the same thing they want, and then they find out a year in, 2 years in, that the person didn't want to have kids and you did, or they can never move and it's long distance, or they don't want to be exclusive and you do. Clarify what it is that you both need and want, and then there's less confusion. The second thing is that you set clear boundaries so there are fewer misunderstandings. Boundaries meaning, where does this relationship begin and end? What do I need from you? What do you need from me? And again, it doesn't have to be that you both want exclusivity, but it can mean a lot of things: commitment, exclusivity, and emotional investment. Those are the three key areas that you want to see if this person that you're dating feels the same way that you do on those three areas. And I want to point out that relationships do not look the same for everyone. So it's important to know what works for you and what you need from the person you're dating. There are people who are friends with benefits and are both happy doing that for many years. So if that works for you, great. Now let's talk about when to define the relationship. Some things to consider are your own personal feelings. You've known somebody for some time. At this point, you know where you want to go with this relationship, and that's a good time to start to define it. Also important to remember that this is really about you and it's not about what other people think is the right time. So lots of experts out there will say, after months, you need to define the relationship. After 3 months, you should be defining the relationship. It doesn't matter what society says. It doesn't matter what other people say. It matters how you feel. There are people who decide to get married after a date. Does that mean that that's going to work for you? Not necessarily. So really check in with yourself. Another thing to look for is signs that the person you're dating feels the same way that you do. You want to look for consistency, for investment of time and energy, somebody who makes you a priority so that you feel good in that person's presence. That's when you should start to think about defining the relationship. Let's talk about how to define the relationship. Some questions to ask yourself. How do you feel when you're with this person? Are you happy? Are you anxious about where you stand? Do you feel stuck and stagnant? Those are all things to think about. The second thing is, what type of relationship do you want? And I said this before, it's all about you. What do you want out of this specific relationship? The third thing to consider is to prepare before you have this conversation. The thing you don't want to say is, we need to talk, because it puts the other person on the defensive. This is a common thing. We go, we need to talk, and then that person wants to run for the hills. So instead, start with what you like about this person. Use I statements like, I'm really enjoying the time we spend together. And I've decided that I want to stop dating other men so I can focus on getting to know you better. And notice that I didn't say, I want to marry you, or I want to plan a future with you, because you can't plan in the distant future. But for right now, you want to discover more about this person, and maybe you want to have an exclusive relationship in order to do that. That's just one scenario. So you want to be specific about defining what that relationship looks like to you and tell them. Maybe it means, I'd like to start seeing you every week, or I'd like to shut down our dating profiles, or I'd like to move in together, depending on where you are in the relationship. And then give it over to them. Ask them What do you want? Right? It's not a monologue, it's a dialogue. And then listen. Listen and ask open-ended questions. What do you think? How do you feel? Tell me more about that. The last thing I want you to consider is to be ready for any response. If that person is on the same page, the next response is, let's discuss and figure it out. You may not be exactly in the same place. And so if you're not, really think out, like, what are the next steps? What will you do if that person does not want the same thing you do? Know your bottom line, because that is the most important thing. Always, what do I need? What do I want? And if this doesn't work, can you negotiate something, or is this done? Are we done? So I encourage you to have an open mind during this conversation and detach from the outcome. If you do define the relationship and you're both on the same page, that's fantastic, because you will have no more guessing or anxiety about how you both feel. And remember also that this is not a conversation that is one and done. It's a conversation that you're going to want to revisit from time to time, because feelings can change over time in a relationship. Relationships are a living thing. The more open and honest your communication is, the better the relationship will be. So I want to know, have you ever been afraid to define the relationship? Please leave a comment and let me know.